I have zero sense of direction. I could visit a place 10 times and still get lost. So Paxton Levis spent an entire week hand-drawing every street around our school onto a set of maps. There was no north, south, east, or west on them. Only labels like the convenience store with the yellow dog out front, and the old man who sells terrible hot dogs. He'd ruffle my hair and say, "What would you do without me?" That was how it went, until my best friend Patricia Sandler came back from studying abroad. On our graduation trip together, Paxton told me to get out of the car and check whether something was wrong with it. I'd barely gotten both feet on the ground before the car pulled away without me. A message came through from him. "Paxton, there's a rest stop 3 kilometers up the road. Patricia and I will wait for you there." Patricia is right. If nobody ever pushes you, you're never going to learn your way around. I walked for an hour through a downpour, working myself into a panic, before Paxton sent me a hand-drawn map. It had arrows on it, and a cute little smiley face doodled in the corner. "Just follow this. 20 minutes tops." But my legs ached with every step, and the route kept drifting further off course, until I ended up in a dead end. I called Paxton. Patricia's bright laugh came through instead. "Congratulations, sweetie, you took a wrong turn. Paxton and I made a bet on whether you'd figure out he flipped the arrows on purpose. I said you wouldn't. Guess I know you better than he does. So for the rest of the trip, it's just going to be Paxton and me. Dragging you along is honestly way too much trouble." Paxton's voice came through next to hers, doting and amused. "A bet's a bet. I'll listen to whatever you want. Depending on someone else comes at too high a price." High enough that when he finally walked away, I didn't even know which direction was which anymore. I wiped my eyes. This time, I want to find my own way. By the time I stumbled home following my phone's map, it was already the middle of the night. The wrong road Paxton Levis had directed me down ran past an abandoned factory. When I fell, a piece of exposed rebar tore into my ankle, close enough to punching straight through my foot. Blood dripped into the mud and onto the floor. I didn't even have the strength to change my shoes, just braced myself against the shoe cabinet and tried to catch my breath. My mother saw me and gasped. She rushed over to hold me up. "Cleo, what happened to you? Didn't Paxton say he was taking you on a road trip?" I looked down at the torn, curled-back skin on my ankle and told her everything, start to finish. The light in her eyes dimmed, little by little, replaced by disbelief. "How could this happen?" she murmured. "Before your high school finals, he used to take the long way on his bike every single day just so you wouldn't be late. And when you got lost in college, he was so panicked he almost called the police. He even said that when he bought a house someday, it would be somewhere you could find your way home to with your eyes closed." Her hands shook as she wiped the mud off my face. "I watched him grow up. How did he turn into this?" I cut her off. "Mom, don't. I want to study abroad." She cleaned and dressed my wound with careful hands. "All right. I'll get your paperwork sorted. We'll go somewhere far away from all of this." Later that night, the wound got infected, and my fever climbed to 39 degrees Celsius. Half conscious, I heard my mother on the phone in the living room. "Paxton, you told me you'd take care of Cleo, and that's the only reason I let her go anywhere with you. Her foot was almost ruined for good. Is this what you call taking care of her?" The voice on the other end was too muffled to make out, but my mother slammed the phone down, furious. The phone by my pillow buzzed. "Your mom just called and chewed me out. Cleo, I really didn't expect you to be so delicate that you'd end up running a fever over this. Fine. I won't leave you behind by yourself again next time, all right? Just get better soon." A notification popped up at the top of my screen. Patricia Sandler had a modest following as a travel blogger and liked to post about her trips. She'd put up a carousel of photos, all of them shots of the two of them together at the beach. Paxton's shoulder tilted slightly in every frame, blocking the sea breeze from hitting Patricia. Patricia held up a cold drink with a lemon slice in it, grinning brightly. The comments were already flooded with fans. "Is Patricia finally making it official? That guy's profile is gorgeous. That height difference is unreal. I'd let him step on me." Patricia replied with a shy, face-covering emoji. Right after that, Paxton's account showed up in the comments too. "Don't wander off. You don't know this place, and I'd hate for you to get lost." Patricia shot back instantly. "Even if I got lost, you'd come find me. I'm not scared." I stared at the screen, my fingers twitching on their own. I opened Patricia's profile and kept scrolling down. The timeline rolled back to New Year's Eve last year. Paxton had told me he had to work through the night doing year-end accounts at the office. I'd spent that night alone in my rented apartment, eating a frozen pot pie and watching the countdown on TV. Patricia's post that same night showed fireworks blooming over a river, and the two of them holding hands tight. The caption read, "New Year, and he's still the one person I can always count on." This Valentine's Day, Paxton gave me a star projector. He said he'd had someone make it just for me, even though I'd never shown any interest in stars. 6 months earlier, Patricia had posted a photo of the exact same projector. Her caption, "He always knows exactly what I want." I closed my eyes. A metallic taste rose in the back of my throat. I lifted my wrist and felt the silver bracelet there, the one with the GPS tracker built in. When Paxton had put it on me himself, he'd said it meant he'd always know where I was, that he could find me anytime, anywhere. I yanked the clasp until it snapped and threw the bracelet in the trash. 3 days later, the bandage on my ankle got changed for a fresh one, but it still ached faintly whenever I walked. My mother had gone to a consulting agency to look into expediting the paperwork for me to study abroad. Paxton had a spare key to my place. He let himself in, carrying a beautifully boxed Black Forest cake. "Is your fever gone?" "It's gone." He set the cake down on the coffee table and reached out of habit to touch my hair. "Your mom just got worked up because she was worried. I already apologized to her." I turned my head away. He sighed, exasperated. "Still sulking?" "No. I didn't even like sweets. Patricia was the one who loved cake. Go change. I'm taking you out." "Where?" "There's a new immersive escape room that opened on the south side of town. Patricia wants to go, and so do you." I refused. "I'm not going." His voice went cold, and he half dragged me out the door. "Patricia went out of her way to get you a ticket. She's trying to smooth things over between you two. If you don't go, who's going to want to take you anywhere after this?" By the time we got to the escape room's lobby, Patricia was already waiting. The second she saw me, she rushed over and tried to loop her arm through mine. "Cleo, sweetie, I missed you so much. Paxton and I were off traveling for days, and I had no one to keep me company. Paxton's a jerk, so he doesn't count." Paxton stepped in front of me. "She's got an injury on her foot. Don't go grabbing at her." Patricia stuck out her tongue. Fine, Paxton's always playing favorites with Cleo." "Obviously. Who else would I play favorites with if not my own girlfriend?" A staff member handed out blindfolds, and we all put them on, ready to head into the room. I hung back at the rear, my hand resting on Paxton's shoulder. Through the fabric of his shirt, I could feel him holding Patricia's hand, guiding her forward. "Watch out, there's a step." His voice was barely a whisper, meant for the person ahead of him. I stumbled and nearly fell. He didn't even turn around. The blindfolds came off. Inside the escape room, only 2 weak flashlights lit the dark. Patricia let out a shriek and pressed herself straight into Paxton's arms. "Paxton, I'm scared. You have to protect me." Paxton pulled her against his shoulder, laughing low. "Such a baby, and yet you're the one who insisted on the horror theme." "I don't care. If you don't protect me, I'm never speaking to you again." "Fine, just stay close." They carried on like a couple head over heels, flirting shamelessly in the dark. The staff had only handed out 2 small flashlights. Paxton held one, Patricia held the other. I could only follow along by the scraps of light spilling from their hands, feeling my way one careful step at a time. The sharp ache in my ankle slowed me down. "Can you two walk slower? My foot hurts." "There's a time limit on this room. You'll just have to push through it." At a fork in the path, they stopped. They glanced at each other, then switched off both flashlights at the same time. The world dropped into suffocating, total darkness. "Paxton? Patricia?" I reached out blindly, grabbing nothing but cold air. They'd run off and left me alone in this maze. In a dead end where I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. I felt my way along the wall. Just then, a staff member in a blood-soaked costume jumped out of a corner and screamed inches from my face. I shrieked and dropped straight to the floor, tears spilling out of me before I could stop them. Seeing how hard I was crying, the actor stopped and pulled off his mask. "Hey, are you all right?" He radioed for a staff member to come help. 10 minutes later, someone with a flashlight walked me out through the emergency exit. The second the door to the escape room opened, the sudden daylight made me squint. Paxton and Patricia were already standing in the rest area by the exit. Patricia had a can of iced cola in one hand, leaning against Paxton's shoulder as she scrolled through something on his phone. She caught sight of me, still looking shell-shocked, and burst out laughing. "Cleo, are you really that much of a coward? They had to walk you out like a lost kid." Paxton's brow furrowed instantly. "They walked you out? You couldn't even manage that little bit of a room on your own." I still had tears drying on my face. "Why did you two turn off the lights?" Paxton said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I was helping you get over it. You can't even tell north from south. If I don't push you, when are you ever going to learn to find your way around?" Patricia sidled up next to me, smiling. "Don't be mad, Cleo. We didn't actually ditch you, you know. We were waiting for you at the exit the whole time." I didn't want anything to do with either of them. I turned to walk out, and Patricia stuck out her foot and tripped me. I hit the ground. The wound on my ankle split back open, and blood trickled down my shin. Patricia lifted her camera and pointed the lens straight at my face. "Everyone, look at this." My bestie's legs turned to jelly after coming out of the escape room. "She can't even walk on flat ground. This is comedy gold." She laughed so hard she was practically shaking, the camera flash strobing until my head spun. Paxton stood off to the side, his gaze dropping to my bleeding ankle, Something caught in his throat. He still didn't come help me up. He just said offhand to Patricia, "Don't film too long. She's sensitive about how she looks." It felt like someone had shoved a fistful of broken glass into my chest, scraping raw with every breath. I lurched to my feet and lunged for Patricia's camera. "Stop filming." In the struggle, the camera hit the floor. Patricia got knocked backward by the force of it. Paxton's face changed instantly. He shoved me off and pulled Patricia into his arms. "Cleo Horstman, have you lost your mind? Patricia was just joking around with you. Is that really worth smashing her equipment over? Do you have any idea how important that camera is to a blogger like her?" I leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "Her equipment matters. I don't." He froze for a second. I dragged my bleeding leg and limped my way out of the lobby. When a friend dropped me off at home after the hospital, the apartment was empty. "Mom," I called out. No answer. I sank onto the couch and pulled out my phone to give her a call. The second the screen lit up, a local trending topics notification popped up. Well-known blogger Patricia Sandler exposes. My best friend's mother was a mistress. Like mother, like daughter. Patricia's profile picture sat right at the top of the post. She'd written a long post, every line dripping with accusation. Some people are just born with a habit of stealing what belongs to other people. I always thought of her as my best friend, and I never imagined her mother was a repeat offender when it came to wrecking other people's families. No wonder she's also. I don't even want to use that word to describe someone I used to call my best friend. Attached underneath was her so-called evidence. Fabricated chat logs, blurry transfer receipts, and a photo of my father's marriage certificate with another woman. The comments were an ugly pile-up of insults. God, poor Patricia, latching onto a friend like that is basically getting bitten by a snake. Like mother, like daughter. No wonder she won't let go of someone else's boyfriend either. Last time I ran into Patricia at that escape room, I saw her sneaking around watching Patricia and her boyfriend. Somebody should just post that mother-daughter duo's home address. A chill ran through my whole body. My hand shook so hard I could barely hold the phone. Years ago, my father had tricked my mother into a lavish wedding. He'd made excuse after excuse to put off registering the marriage, until his other wife showed up with the actual marriage certificate in hand. That was how my mother found out she'd been the other woman's replacement all along, without knowing it. His new wife brought people to make a scene, hanging banners around our apartment complex and splashing red paint on our door. My mother's mind broke completely. She swallowed an entire bottle of sleeping pills. I was the one who sat by her hospital bed day after day and pulled her back from the edge. I'd only ever told one person about what happened to my mother. Only Paxton knew. My hands shaking, I dialed his number. "Cleo, have you calmed down? What is this trending post about?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You smashed Patricia's camera, and she wouldn't stop crying. I didn't know what else to do. I told her about your mom to cheer her up. I never thought she'd actually post it online," I said, nearly grinding my teeth to dust. "Make her take it down." Paxton sighed. "I'll agree to anything else you want, but not that. Patricia is a blogger. If she deletes it now, that's basically admitting she made the whole thing up. Do you really want to ruin her over this? It'll drop off the trending list in a day or two. People forget fast. And as for your mom, that's all in the past anyway. She's older, she's not even online, it won't actually affect her." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I hung up. I called my mother's number over and over like a woman possessed. Every time it went straight to voicemail. The image of her face, that hollow desperate look right before she'd swallowed those pills years ago, flashed through my mind, and I half ran, half crawled to the rooftop. "Mom." I dropped to my knees and reached out to her. "Mom, please come down. I'm begging you, come down." My mother shook her head, the corner of her mouth twisting into something bitter. "Cleo, once I'm gone, you'll still have Paxton. Paxton might not always do the right thing, but I know he really does care about you. He'll take good care of you." I screamed, almost shrill with panic. "No, that's not true. All of this, everything with the trending post, it was all Paxton." My mother froze. In the half a second she hesitated, I lunged forward and pulled her back over the railing to safety. My mother clung to me and sobbed, loud and broken. "Oh, Cleo. I'm so sorry. I didn't see him for the monster that he is." I buried my face in the curve of her neck. "Mom, let's go. Back home." I threw our IDs and whatever essentials we needed into a suitcase as fast as I could. We took a taxi straight to the airport. Wherever the road ahead took me, Paxton would never be part of it again. The terminal at the international airport hummed with a low, mechanical buzz. My ankle throbbed with every step, the coarse emergency bandages soaking through, with fresh spots of pink, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Every meter between us and the city was a breath of clean air returning to my lungs. My mother sat silently in the waiting area, her hands clasped tightly over her handbag, her eyes fixed on the rain-streaked glass outside. She looked fragile, stripped down to her barest core, but her posture was upright. She was no longer looking back. I sat beside her, pulled out my SIM card, and snapped it in half. The small golden chip clicked sharply between my fingernails. I dropped the pieces into a paper coffee cup and threw it into the recycle bin. Cleo, my mother spoke softly, her voice raspy from crying on the rooftop. Where are we flying to first? London, I said, holding her hand. The agency had the visa pre-approved for the winter semester. We're taking the midnight flight. We'll rent a small flat near the conservatory. You can take up your painting again. She squeezed my fingers. And your foot? It'll heal. When the boarding call sounded, I didn't look back at the concourse. I dragged my injured leg up the jet bridge, took my seat by the window, and watched the city lights dissolve into the low-hanging cloud cover as the plane rose into the dark. For the first time in my life, I had no map. No hand-drawn lines, no cute doodles in the corners, no carefully placed traps disguised as affection. Just thousands of miles of empty gray sky. The rainy night turned into a gray morning back in the city Cleo had left behind. Paxton stood outside Cleo's apartment door, holding a bag of hot red bean buns from the bakery 3 streets over. He tapped his foot against the welcome mat, leaning against the doorframe as he pulled out his spare key. He had expected Cleo to be sulking in her room, her mother sitting quietly in the kitchen making tea. He'd bring the buns, say a few offhand words about how dramatic she was being, and everything would reset to its usual orbit. He turned the key. The lock clicked open. Cleo. Silence met him. The apartment smelled of faint lavender bleach and empty air. Paxton walked into the living room, setting the paper bag on the coffee table. Cleo, stop hiding. I brought the buns you. He paused. The living room was stripped bare. The photo frames on the mantelpiece, the ones featuring Cleo and her mother, were gone. The coat rack by the door was empty. A sudden, sharp discomfort pinched behind Paxton's ribs. He walked quickly down the hall and pushed open Cleo's bedroom door. The bed was made, the sheets pulled tight and smooth. The closet doors swung open to reveal bare hangers. The desk where she kept her textbooks and her sketchpads was entirely clean. What is this? He muttered, pulling out his phone. He dialed Cleo's number. The number you have dialed is currently unavailable or has been disconnected. He dialed again. Same automated voice. Frowning, he tried her mother's number. The number you have dialed is out of service. Paxton's chest tightened. He pulled up his phone's location sharing app, the one linked to the silver bracelet he'd locked around Cleo's wrist 2 years ago. The screen showed a dark gray dot with a single line of text. Device offline / signal lost. She's playing games again, he scoffed aloud, though his voice sounded thin in the empty room. She's just throwing a fit because of the post. He turned to leave, but his eye caught the small trash can beside the desk. Sitting right at the top of the dry trash was the silver tracker bracelet. The heavy metal clasp had been sheared off with pliers, the delicate silver links bent completely out of shape. Beside it lay the half-eaten Black Forest cake he dropped off 3 days ago, covered in gray mold. Paxton stood frozen over the trash bin. His phone chimed in his hand. A text from Patricia. Patricia. Paxton. Did you see my post? It hit top 3 on the regional trends. My follower count shot up by 20,000 overnight. Patricia. When are we going out to celebrate? You promised you'd take me to that French bistro downtown. Paxton stared at the bright green bubbles on his screen. For the first time, the sight of Patricia's messages didn't bring him that comfortable, flattered warmth. He typed back. Did you check Cleo's apartment? Patricia. Why would I check her apartment? She's probably hiding under her covers crying to her mom. Serves her right for smashing my camera. Paxton looked back at the empty closet, then down at the ruined silver bracelet. In the bin, a cold, heavy knot dropped into his stomach. Edinburgh in late autumn was a city built of wet cobblestones, dark granite, and sweeping sea winds. We rented a small 2-bedroom flat on the top floor of a stone tenement in Marchmont, overlooking the green expanse of the meadows. The rain here was different from home. It didn't come down in tropical downpours, but hung in the air as a constant, fine mist that smelled of wood smoke and old stone. For the first 2 weeks, my foot kept me confined to the flat. The doctor at the local NHS clinic had looked at the infected tear on my ankle with deep concern, debriding the dead tissue and wrapping it in fresh, heavy gauze. You're lucky the steel didn't sever the Achilles tendon, she had told me in crisp Scottish English. Who dressed this initially? It was filthy. I did, I said quietly. I didn't have time to clean it properly. While my leg healed, I sat by the tall bay window, watching people walk there. Dogs across the misty park. My mother sat across from me, her canvas set up on an easel, painting the gray rooftops under the pale northern light. She hadn't mentioned Paxton's name once since we stepped off the plane. The shadows beneath her eyes were beginning to fade, replaced by a quiet, steady rhythm. On the 3rd week, The bandages came off, leaving a thick, jagged red line across my ankle. I put on a pair of sturdy walking boots, pulled a heavy wool coat over my shoulders, and stepped out onto the street alone. My heart hammered against my ribs the moment the heavy main door clicked shut behind me. Without a phone map, without Paxton's hand-drawn guides, the streets of Marchmont looked like an labyrinth of identical graystone buildings. North, south, east, west, the terms meant nothing to me. Turn left at the coffee shop with the red sign, I told myself, repeating my own mental markers. Walk 3 blocks until the tall iron gates. The chemist is across from the bakery with the round windows. I took 5 steps and got turned around at the first crescent. Panic flared instantly, hot and sharp, right behind my throat. My hands began to sweat inside my leather gloves. My instincts screamed at me to turn around, to run back inside, to find someone, anyone, to tell me which way to go. What would you do without me? Paxton's voice echoed from years ago, condescending and sweet. I stood dead still in the middle of the pavement, wind whipping cold rain into my face. I closed my eyes. I took 3 deep breaths. Then I opened my eyes, looked at the street sign mounted on the stone wall, Brunsfield Place, and looked at the direction of the traffic. I didn't turn back. I picked a direction and started walking. I took 3 wrong turns that afternoon. I ended up at a dead-end alley near a fire station. I walked 20 minutes out of my way toward the canal instead of the grocery store. But I didn't cry. I didn't freeze. I asked a woman walking a terrier for directions, followed her pointed finger, and finally stepped into the warm, bright light of the small greengrocer's shop on the corner. When I carried the paper bag of fresh oranges and bread back up the 3 flights of stairs to our flat, my leg throbbed with a dull, satisfying ache. I set the bag on the kitchen counter, walked over to the mirror in the hallway, and looked at myself. I had gotten lost, and I had found my own way back. While Cleo was learning the layout of Edinburgh street by street, the storm she had left behind in her home city was turning into a quiet, destructive fire. 2 weeks after Cleo's disappearance, a formal legal notice was delivered to Patricia Sandler's agency address. It wasn't a desperate text or a tearful confrontation. It was a formal lawsuit for public defamation, malicious disclosure of private information, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, filed by one of the city's top civil litigation law firms. Before leaving the country, Cleo had transferred a power of attorney to her mother's old family lawyer, Mr. Vance. Mr. Vance did not play games. Along with the court summons, he released a comprehensive, verified public statement backed by official records. The statement contained 1. The original court documents from 20 years ago proving Cleo's father had committed bigamy, legally exonerating Cleo's mother as a victim of marital fraud rather than a mistress. 2. Certified hospital records showing Cleo's mother's emergency admission for carbon monoxide poisoning and depression following the public harassment 20 years ago. 3. The raw, unedited footage from the escape room's lobby security cameras, showing Patricia deliberately sticking her foot out to trip Cleo, laughing as Cleo's ankle bled, and holding a camera in her face while Paxton stood by, watching. The internet, which had been so quick to tear Cleo and her mother apart on Patricia's word, turned overnight. Netizens are a fickle, ferocious crowd. Once the narrative flipped, the backlash was merciless. Holy shit, look at the escape room video. She literally tripped her injured friend and filmed her bleeding for clout. The mother wasn't even a mistress, she was scammed by a bigamist. Patricia fabricated the entire chat log. And who's that guy standing next to her? Her best friend's boyfriend? He just stood there while his girlfriend bled on the floor. Cancel Patricia Sandler. Report her account for cyberbullying and defamation. Within 48 hours, Patricia's follower count crashed from 300,000 to under 10,000. Her sponsorship deals pulled out one after another, demanding breach of contract penalties for brand damage. Inside a high-end cafe downtown, Patricia slammed her phone onto the table, her face red and blotchy with tears. Paxton, do something, she shrieked, ignoring the stares of the other patrons. My agency just frozen my account. Brands are suing me for $50,000. Talk to Cleo. Tell her to drop the lawsuit. Paxton sat across from her. In just 2 weeks, he had lost weight. Dark circles bruised the skin beneath his eyes and his stubble was unkempt. He hadn't slept properly since the night he found the broken bracelet in the trash. He looked at Patricia, at her smeared mascara, her sharp, angry expression, the ugly twist of her mouth as she demanded help. Where was the sweet, fragile girl who used to laugh bright and clear? Where was the helpless best friend who needed his protection? Talk to Cleo? Paxton laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. How am I supposed to talk to her, Patricia? Her phone is disconnected. Her apartment is empty. Her mother's house is sold. She left. Then find her. Patricia reached across the table, grabbing his arm violently. You always knew where she was. You had her location tracker. You drew those stupid maps for her. She can't even find her way to the grocery store without you. She must be hiding somewhere in the city. Paxton stared down at her fingers digging into his coat. She can't even find her way without you. The words, which used to fill him with a warm, intoxicating sense of control, now sounded like a heavy iron door slamming shut in his face. He remembered the road trip, the rain, the dead-end factory path. He remembered sitting in the dry car with Patricia, laughing while Cleo walked miles in the dark with an exposed piece of rebar tearing into her ankle. He remembered Patricia saying, "I bet she won't figure out you flipped the arrows." And he had gone along with it. He had smiled, agreed, and let the girl who had loved him for 6 years bleed in the mud just to win a cheap laugh from Patricia. Paxton pulled his arm out of Patricia's grip. "Don't touch me," he said softly. "What?" Patricia blinked, stunned. "The post was your idea," Paxton said, standing up from his chair. "The escape room trip was your idea. Flipping the map was your idea. I was an idiot who went along with it because I thought you were special." He looked down at her with an expression of cold, absolute disgust. "You're not special, Patricia. You're just malicious. And I'm worse than you." He turned and walked out of the cafe, ignoring her screaming his name behind him. Winter in Scotland was long, dark, and cold, but inside the flat in Marchmont, life took deep, sturdy roots. My mother joined a local community art group. Her English, rusted from years of disuse, sharpened quickly as she made friends with elderly Scottish ladies who taught her how to bake fruit scones and knit thick wool sweaters. Her paintings began to change. The dark, cramped brushstrokes of the past yielded to wide, sweeping landscapes of sea cliffs and amber heather. I enrolled in the university's winter design intensive. Every morning at 8, I walked from Marchmont through the meadows, past the ancient stone walls of the old town, to the design studios on Lauriston Place. At first, I used a physical paper map I bought from a tourist shop. Whenever I reached an unfamiliar intersection, I'd stop, orient the paper against the street signs, and trace the line with my finger. When a classmate named Callum, a tall, quiet Scottish boy with ink-stained fingers, saw me doing this in the studio courtyard, he laughed gently. "You don't need to stare at the paper like it's going to bite you, Cleo," he said, handing me a cup of hot tea. "Edinburgh's easy once you learn the layers. High Street is the spine. Everything else just flows down to the valley or up to the crags. If you get lost, just look for the castle. It's always there." I looked up. Sure enough, high above the grey rooftops, the ancient basalt fortress of Edinburgh Castle sat dark and solid against the pale sky. Look for the castle. Not a person. Not a guide. A landmark that belonged to everyone and stood fixed in the sky. "Thanks, Callum," I said, taking a sip of the tea. By spring, I didn't open the paper map anymore. I knew that the narrow wind between the bakeries led straight to the library. I knew that taking the stone steps down from Victoria Street brought me to the grass market. I knew that when the wind blew from the east, it brought the salty tang of the Firth of Forth straight down the avenue. My ankle scar faded from purple to a thin silver line. It no longer ached when it rained. One afternoon in May, Mr. Vance sent an email from home. The lawsuit was finalized. Patricia Sandler had been ordered by the court to pay a substantial sum in compensation for defamation and emotional distress, alongside publishing a formal, undeletable apology across all major platforms. Her blogging agency had dropped her permanently, and her name was ruined in the industry. As for Paxton, Mr. Vance wrote, "Mr. Levis has visited my office 7 times in the past 4 months. He asked for your address, your school name, your phone number." I reminded him of the restraining order we submitted alongside the suit. "Looks unwell. He left a package for you. I have held it in my office safe as per your instructions." I replied to the email with 2 short lines. "Burn the package. Don't write to me about him again." I closed my laptop, walked out to the balcony, and took a deep breath of the cool spring air. The cherry blossoms in the meadows were blooming, casting a soft pink veil over the green grass below. I didn't care where Paxton was, how unwell he looked, or what he had written in his package. He was a shadow from a small, dark room I had stepped out of months ago. Autumn returned to Edinburgh a year after we arrived, painting the trees in the meadows a brilliant, fiery orange. I was 22 now. My final project for the design intensive, a series of hand-bound minimalist urban cartography books, had won top honors at the Academy's autumn exhibition. The gallery space on Royal Mile was packed with students, professors, and local art collectors. Callum stood beside my display case, raising a glass of sparkling cider toward me. To the girl who used to get lost between the studio and the coffee shop, now selling maps to the locals. I laughed, clinking my glass against his. "They're not just maps, Callum. They're routes." Whatever you call them, they're brilliant. He smiled, gesturing toward the entrance. I'm going to grab more drinks. Back in 5. As Callum walked away into the crowd, I turned back to adjust the lighting over my main display, a large, hand-carved wooden relief map of Edinburgh's old town, marked not by street names, but by sensory landmarks, where the baker warms the morning air, where the pipes play at sunset, where the wind turns cold. Cleo. The voice was low, cracked, and completely out of place amid the soft hum of the gallery. I froze. Slowly, I turned around. Standing near the edge of the display, holding a battered leather messenger bag, was Paxton Levis. He looked unrecognizable. The sharp, immaculate boy from high school was gone. He had lost significant weight. His expensive designer coat hung loosely over narrow shoulders. His eyes were sunken, laced with red veins, and his hands were trembling as he stared at me. He looked like a man who had walked through a desert for a year without water. Cleo. He breathed, taking a shaky step forward. I finally found you. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I didn't feel the sudden, suffocating panic that used to seize me whenever he raised his voice. I just stood beside my wooden map, looking at him with the cold, detached curiosity one might reserve for a stranger on a bus. How did you get into this gallery, Paxton? I asked quietly. Tears welled up in his eyes instantly, spilling down his hollow cheeks. I searched for 14 months, Cleo, he choked out, his voice raw. I checked every foreign art program, every flight manifest I could pull favors for. I spent months asking people in London, in Manchester, until someone saw your work featured on the university's public page. He stepped closer, reaching into his coat with trembling fingers. I brought you something, he whispered desperately. I made it for you. I spent 3 months drawing it. He pulled out a thick roll of cream paper, unrolling it with hurried, desperate hands. It was a map, a hand-drawn map of Edinburgh. Every street, every wind, every alley was traced in fine black ink. And scattered across the paper were hundreds of tiny, painstaking annotations in his neat handwriting. The bakery Cleo might like. The quiet bench where Cleo can rest her foot. The safe road home. Don't turn left here, it's too steep for Cleo. In the bottom right corner he had drawn a small, tear-stained smiley face. Look, Cleo, he sobbed, holding the paper out toward me like a beggar holding a cup. I drew it for you. There's no wrong turns this time. I marked every single step. I learned all the streets for you. I won't leave you behind ever again. I swear to God, Cleo, I'll never let go of your hand again. I looked at the map. I looked at the delicate, obsessive ink lines, the cute little doodles, the promises written across the paper. A year ago, this map would have felt like a lifeline. It would have made me feel safe, protected, cared for. Now looking at it, I only felt a deep, profound pity for the person I used to be. The girl who thought a cage was a sanctuary just because the warden drew flowers on the bars. Paxton, I said, my voice steady, smooth, and entirely calm. He looked up, hope flared wild and bright in his wet eyes. Cleo, you forgive me. Do you know where we are right now? I asked quietly. He blinked, confused. Edinburgh, the gallery. This gallery sits on the corner of the Royal Mile and St. Mary Street, I said softly, stepping closer to him. If you walk 50 yards down that hill, you reach the Cowgate. If you take the stone steps to your right, you end up on the North Bridge. If you follow the wind straight ahead, you reach the sea. Paxton stared at me, his mouth slightly open. I know this city, I said, looking him dead in the eye. I know every turn, every stone, every climb, and every descent. I walked all of it on my own feet, on the foot you let bleed in the mud. Cleo, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Patricia tricked me. Patricia didn't push me out of the car, Paxton. I cut him off cleanly. Patricia didn't flip the arrows on the map. Patricia didn't turn off the flashlights in the dark. You did. I reached out and gently took the hand-drawn map from his shaking fingers. He held his breath, a desperate, pathetic smile starting to form on his lips. I didn't rip it up. I didn't throw it in his face. I walked over to the tall brass recycling bin near the gallery entrance, folded the thick cream paper in half, and dropped it inside. The paper slid down with a soft thud, disappearing into the dark bin. I don't need your maps anymore, Paxton, I said, turning back to face him. I haven't needed them for a long time. Cleo, is everything all right? Callum walked back into the main gallery room carrying 2 fresh glasses of cider. He stopped when he saw the thin, unkempt man standing near my display, looking as though his entire world had just turned to ash. Paxton stared at Callum, then looked at me. He saw the way Callum stood casually near me, not crowding me, not steering me, just holding a drink and waiting for my lead. He saw the quiet, solid grace in my posture. The posture of a woman who owned her space, her city, and her life. Who is he? Paxton whispered, his voice cracking. He's my friend, I said, simple. And you need to leave. Cleo, please. Paxton took a half step forward, reaching out a hand. Just 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes to explain. If you don't leave right now, I said calmly, pulling my phone from my pocket, I will call the gallery security, and then I will call the police to enforce the international restraining order Mr. Vance filed last month. You have 10 seconds. Paxton froze. He looked at my face, searching desperately for a flicker of anger, a hint of hatred, a trace of the girl who used to cry in his car or reach out blindly for his hand in the dark. He found nothing. Only a vast, calm blue sea that had long wiped away his footprints. His hand dropped to his side. The last light in his eyes flickered out, leaving behind only a hollow, empty husk. Slowly, painfully, Paxton turned around and walked toward the gallery door. His shoulders were hunched, his steps unsteady, like a man walking blind into a fog he would never find his way out of. He pushed open the heavy glass door, stepped out into the rainy Edinburgh evening, and vanished into the crowd on the Royal Mile. He didn't know which way he was going. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care. Friends of yours? Callum asked gently, stepping beside me and handing me my glass. No, I said, taking a sip of the sweet, crisp cider. Just someone who got lost. Callum smiled. Ready for the rest of the show, artist? I looked around the bright, warm gallery, at my wooden maps mounted on the walls, at the people admiring the routes I had carved, at the tall windows showing the rain falling over the ancient stone city outside. I didn't need north, south, east, or west. I didn't need yellow dogs or hot dog stands to tell me where I stood. Every road beneath my feet belonged to me. Yeah, I smiled, holding Callum's gaze, then looking out toward the open avenue. I'm ready. I know the way.